Okay, good morning. This morning we're going to be doing Chaye Sarah. We're going back. Chaye Sarah, we've really covered from the Rav's point, but I gleaned some new information that I thought we would share this year on the Rav on the Jewish cemetery and burial, which he literally studies from this parsha, from the first story in the parsha, namely the purchase of Ma'arat HaMachpelah. So if you're using the Chumash, the Art Scroll Chumash, we're on page 106, the very beginning of Chaye Sarah. So we know the story. We know that Avram purchases the Ma'arat HaMachpelah to bury his wife. And the Rav viewed the story of Avram purchasing Ma'arat HaMachpelah as a source to learn three different points. Point one, it teaches us the Jewish laws of purchasing a Jewish cemetery, or shall we say, teaches the laws of a Jewish cemetery. What is required in a Jewish cemetery? Point two, the first few psukim of the parsha offer us an insight into the protocol on Jewish mourning. That's also what the Rav learns from here. And finally, the psukim document the conversation that Avram had with Bnei Chet and Ephron. It sheds a light on how Avram perceived the role of the Jew in the non-Jewish world, which was very, very important. So many points that I'm going to share with you, I gleaned from Rav Avishai David's wonderful work, Darosh Darash Yosef. Okay, let's begin. Go to Pasuk base. Vatamos Sarah. The first Pasuk doesn't really deal with the purchase of Ma'arat HaMachpelah. Vatamat Sarah b'kriyat arba hi Chevron be'eretz Canaan. Vayavo Avram lispod the Sarah v'liv kota. And so the Torah tells us, and so Sarah died in Kiryat Arba, and then the Torah tells us, Kiryat Arba, what's Kiryat Arba? It's Chevron. It's in the Eretz Canaan. And Avram came to eulogize Sarah and to bewail her. Okay, let's take a look at what this pasuk is really teaching us. First of all, the Rav says there are two words in this pasuk that offer us what intrigued him about this plot of land being the cemetery for his wife. What are they? Do you think about it? That pasuk, Vatama Sarah b'kiryat arba hi Chevron be'eretz Canaan, ve'ova Avram lispod l'Sarah v'liv kota. And Sarah dies in Kiryat Arba, which is Chevron be'eretz Canaan. He says there are two words in that pasuk that allow us to understand why he was intrigued with Ma'arat HaMachpelah. What is it? It's Kiryat Arba. The two words are Kiryat Arba. This gives us an understanding why he so wanted, without a question, this piece of land. It tells us much more than, okay, Chevron had two names, Chevron and Kiryat Arba. That's not what Kiryat Arba is teaching us. These two words rather offer us an insight into the uniqueness of this plot of land. Kiryat Arba, as the Medrash says, was, what does it mean? The place where four couples were going to be buried. At this junction of Avram's life, who is buried there? Adam and Chava. He's now going to be buried eventually with his wife. Then there's going to be Yitzchak and Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah. Four couples were destined to be buried there. That is why he's intrigued by it. Those two words let us understand what was it so special about Ma'arat HaMachpelah. What's crucial for Avraham is that he wanted to be buried in the same place where Adam and Chava were buried. Why? What motivates him so much that he wants to be buried where Adam and Chava are buried? And this, if you will, demonstrates for us that Avram felt there was no gap between human dignity and the Jewish covenantal sanctity. Again, listen to those words. Avraham saw there was no gap between human dignity and the Jewish covenantal sanctity. The Rav suggested that this demands of the Jew not just a parochial view on life, which clearly we're going to have. We're Jewish and we're going to have our parochial, our unique view on it, but there was a universal outlook that the Jew had to have as well. And I'm going to share with you the words of the Rav. The universal problems faced by humanity are also faced by the Jew. Famine, disease, war, oppression, materialism, atheism, permissiveness, pollution of the environment. All these are problems which history has imposed not only on the general community, but also on the covenantal community. We have no right, the Rav writes, to tell the rest of mankind, that's your problem, not our problem. We're Jews. We don't have to be involved in that. Nonsense, the Rav says, where he sees the burial with Adam and Chava as uniting the covenantal destiny with human dignity. It's one and the same. We're unite. 1 second. It's important to note that the Rav was the only Rosh Yeshiva and the only Gadol B'Torah who spoke like this. It wasn't just verbiage that he used. It was an outlook that the Rav had. It was a philosophy of life that he had. He didn't just preach it, he believed it. He felt the Jew had to engage in the world around him and to contribute to the world around him. Whatever we were capable of doing, he felt that engagement was crucial. And if we had the talent, we should share it with the world. He encouraged that engagement. He felt it was our responsibility. So the Rav sees, if you will, a philosophical underpinning to being buried with Adam and Chava. There is he sees no gap between human dignity and the covenantal responsibility. Okay, you had a question.
How does he get from wanting to be buried with Adam and Sarah to
Adam and Chava?
To human dignity?
Who's Adam and Chava? What does Adam and Chava represent?
Universality.
Exactly. And where does he want to be buried? And where does he want Avram, Sarah, Yitzchak, Rivka, and Yaakov and Leah to be buried?
Same place.
Why? Why is that so important to him? And the Rav is arguing.
Human destiny. I'm not sure about the dignity part.
Well, the dignity means the human responsibility. That's what the Rav is using. It's human responsibility. We have to engage in the world around us. We have to contribute. We have to be worried. We have to be, yes, we do have to be worried about all of these issues as the Rav listed them, right? Disease, famine, war, oppression, materialism, atheism, permissiveness, pollution of the environment. All of those are important issues for the Jew. The Jew just can't life and say, I'm going to live, the Rav is saying, I'm going to live only in the base medrash. I'm going to live only in the Dalet Amos Shel Halacha. The Dalet Amos Shel Halacha has to include that as well. That concern as well. And it has. And the Rav took great pride in the fact, I remember him saying, he took great pride in the fact that there were Shomrei Shabbos, Shomrei Torah mitzvos, who were B'nai Torah, who were doctors and lawyers and scientists. This was very important to him. Very, very important to him. And it wasn't to many Rosh Yeshiva, right? There's a lack of isolationism from he denounces, if you will, this isolationism of the Orthodox Jew from the world. The Orthodox Jew is to be part and parcel of the world. And that's why he sees Avram is so motivated to be buried with Adam and Chava. Now, let's continue. That's something else. That's 100% what Am Levadad Yishkon. And wait, you're going to see there's going to be a tension here. B'nai Chet is not going to appreciate this. We're not saying, hey, we forget about our parochialism. We have parochial view of life, 100%. And we're not embarrassed by that. But on the other hand, we have to know that we're also part of humanity.
Rav Soloveitchik obviously was believed in Masorah, so he had sources for this. It wasn't that he just came up with it in the 19th.
No, 100%. 100%. This is the Rambam. This is the Rambam. If not anybody else that I can think of in the history of the Jewish people, it's the Rambam, right? And perhaps that's the Rambam becomes the most important Rishon in the Soloveitchik dynasty. Okay, continue on. Let's go back now to the pasuk. So now we understand why Kiryat Arba is so important to him. Then what it says, Be'eretz Canaan, okay, it's in Eretz Canaan. The next word is crucial for us. Vayavo Avraham. Avram came. What do you mean, Vayavo Avram? Now, Avram came. The words Vayavo Avram offer us two insights about Avram confronting the death of Sarah. First, this tells us, was Avram next to Sarah when she died? No. Torah is letting us in on the emotional devastation that must have gripped Avram. You want to be next to your loved one when they leave this world. That's very important. We can just imagine on our own how upset he was that he wasn't at her side as she left this physical world. And also, he came, Vayavo, teaches us a second lesson the Rav points out. It signifies the withdrawal of the mourner from society. By definition, mourning, by definition, demands of the human being to be alone and lonely. It places that upon us. The mourner is all by himself or by herself. Vayavo is indicating not only he wasn't there when she died, but he came alone. He's confronting mourning. He's confronting the emotional experience all by himself. And then the last three words in the pasuk, lispod lisara v'lif kota. The Rav is bothered by what everyone else is bothered by in this pasuk. The order seems to be out of whack, right? It's not the human reaction to death. It's not, you don't come lispod and then the leaf coat. You cry first. Immediate reaction of the human being to hearing they have lost a loved one is not to write the eulogy. The eulogy is an intellectual experience. The crying is an emotional experience. Eulogy doesn't take first place. Eulogy takes second place. The immediate response is crying. And as the Rav says, you can be guaranteed, no doubt, Abraham was as human as any other human being. He clearly cried right away. So what is the pasuk teaching us? The pasuk is teaching us an insight that Abraham had about his wife that was unique. Abraham realized that she just wasn't his wife. It just wasn't his personal loss. Sarah's death was a communal loss as well. She wasn't just his wife, she was his partner in the covenantal community. And when she dies, he loses that leadership. This realization was so grave that it had to be expressed immediately. He realized his wife wasn't just his personal relation that passed away, but rather humanity lost somebody. And that's why the order is out. But Avram Lispodlis Sarah, he realized, oh my God, it's not just mine. Of course he cried. That was his immediate reaction. But he realized my crying is not unique to me. It's going to affect society. Avram already expressed this back in Vayera. We saw it last week when he was asked by the angels, Aye Sarah Ishtecha, where is your wife? And what did he answer? Two words, Hine ba'ohel. He totally appreciated, my wife is unique. My wife is sanua. My wife is unusual. If that's, and you have to appreciate who my wife is. And he was saying that then, and he's saying that now. He understands, he confronts this reality. And the Rav noted a grammatical oddity also that alludes to this as well. It should have been written, lifkot aleha. You cry over a person, not lifkota. Lifkota is a transitive verb, suggesting the subject and the object are one. It's profound, he says. Abram and Sarah were the same person. There was unity and identity between the two. By using this expression, we are being told that Avram wasn't crying for just a wife whose name was Sarah. He was crying for himself because part of him was being buried as well. Not only did she die, but part of him died. So just that one pasuk, the Rav already sees a unique relationship and important relationship with Sarah that Avraham has. But then goes on, the next pasuk. Remember, we're going to see laws of purchasing a cemetery, a Jewish cemetery, and also insights into the protocol in Jewish mourning, which we've just seen a little of in this past pasuk. Then the next pasuk. Vayakom Avram me'al pnei meso, vayidaber al bnei ches, vayakom, and he stood up, right? And he got up. Avraham rose. This word is crucial to the story because it shares with us the Jewish etiquette in mourning, the Rav notes. First, Avram mourned and he wept. And only afterwards was he able to stand up and in a controlled fashion and to attend to the burial. He has to negotiate a piece of land. You can't negotiate a piece of land emotionally. What do you have to do? You have to vayakom, get up, rise from your emotional, devastating state, and now confront purchasing of the land. When one has not yet asserted control over his emotions, he is not able to gain that human dignity that is required in a negotiation. For example, when the Torah expresses one being conquered by emotions, the word that it uses is the opposite of vayakom, it's vayipol. For example, we see it. Go to Vayechi, turn to Parshas Vayechi, you'll see it all yourself. Who dies in Vayechi? Yaakov. Page 284, Perek Nun, Pasuk Aleph. Yosef is right there when his father dies. Vayipol Yosef. What's the word? Vayipol Yosef al Panei Aviv, Vayevk alav Vayishak lo. Right? He falls. Emotions of death, when we confront death, it is a confrontation that causes us to vayipol. When we stand, we have that human control. When you're emotionally overcome by death, it's the exact opposite. It's vayipol. I remember when my maternal grandfather passed away, I was 9 years old, but I still remember it vividly. And my mother has reminded me over the years that very story as well. It's come up in conversation. So I know it's accurate memory. And that was when my grandfather died in Sarasota, Florida. That's where my mother's parents lived, in Sarasota, Florida. And she got a call. And it was, when a relative dies, it doesn't matter what hour of the day or night, they call you. And it was in the middle of the night. And my mother, trying to process it, and she's ready to pick up the phone. It's 2:00 in the morning. She's ready to call somebody. I don't remember which member. And my father turns to her and she goes, Miriam, you can't call at 2 hours. And she says, what time is it? You lose. My point is in the story is everything becomes vayipol. You're not in control. You don't realize what happens. You confront death. The Malach HaMavis makes everything dark. You get fog. A fog overcomes you. You just don't know. My father said, you can't call now. It's 2:00 in the morning. She goes, what are you talking about? It was her response. What are you talking about? But it was 2:00 in the morning, right? It's vayipol. The kam, vayakom, implies the end of that confrontation, if you will, that's intense stage of mourning. That's the intense stage of mourning. In L'chad Dodi, by the way, we have that same phrase. Hisna'ari me'afor kumi. Shake off the dust. What do you mean shake off the dust? What's the dust? That's the mourning. Hisna'ari me'afor kumi, and rise. Rise from your mourning. Avelut, or mourning, is literally understood and characterized by the inability to stand erect, right? Here, despite...
He gets up from his son's death.
Yeah, continuously. You always see Vayipol as the confrontation with that, the response to death, and you see Vayakom as the end of the mourning. Correct. Here, despite his distress, Avram demonstrates his distinctiveness as a human being in two ways. First, it's in speech. The second is in his ability to rise up, to stand erect, to regain his dignity as a human being. A dignified person is a responsible person. When you stand, vayakom, you're able to negotiate any deal that you need to. When we end the Shiva period, what do we tell on the seventh day? We literally say, kumul. What do you mean, kumul? What does that mean? It means regain your dignity, regain your ability to carry on the legacy of the one you love. Vayipol is the beginning, if you will, of the mourning. Vayakom is the end. It's being able to carry on the legacy. The Ibn Ezra cryptically says on the words me'al panei meso, right? Here the pasuk says, Vayokom Avram me'al panei meso, right? He rose from meaning from Sarah, right? And so the Ibn Ezra just writes, it refers to Sarah's body. That's all the Ibn Ezra writes. It refers to Sarah's body. Vayakam me'al pnei myself. He stood up from standing next to his body. And anybody else would look at it. What did Ibn Ezra? The Rav sees the Ibn Ezra being profound. The Ibn Ezra is describing how Avram responded to the end of the mourning for his wife, in other words, if you will. The Rav explains that Avram realized that Sarah only physically died. Her legacy lives on. Her spirit lives on. There was a wonderful future for Klal Yisrael. As soon as he came to terms with that, there was no need to continue mourning, right? And he rose up and he negotiates for the Maras HaMachpelah. Me'al pnei meso, Ibn Ezra just says cryptically, from the body. That's right. When he realizes what died, a physical body died. But what about her legacy? Her legacy is alive and well, and we will continue it. Then he's able to rise up and regain his posture as a dignified human being who's able to negotiate with the Bnei Ches and with the Ephraim. Continue on. Here, a very important pasuk. Now we're going to see now the insight of Avraham towards the world around him. Remember, we're going to see we already saw protocol in mourning, and we're going to see what halacha, if you will, demands when we purchase a Beis HaKfaros for the Jew. It is totally different than the non-Jewish, and we'll talk about that, than the non-Jewish cemetery. We learn all of this from here, and we also learn Avraham's approach to literally his integration into society at large, even though we have clearly differences with the non-Jewish world. Here's the philosophy as it comes. Here, ger v'toshav, those two words, ger v'toshav anochi imachem. I'm a ger. What's a ger? Stranger. What's a toshav? A citizen. I'm both. Avram told Bnei Ches, I'm an alien and a resident among you. According to the Rav, the translation contains a fundamental dilemma, right? The nature of Avram's relationship with his interlocutors. How do I deal with the non-Jewish world? How do they understand me? How do I understand them? Is Avram a citizen of society? Or does his value system clash with theirs, right? Resulting in an identity that's distinctive and autonomous, the Rav asks. What is it? Is it a ger? Is it a toshav? The Bnei Ches, you have to understand something, respected Avram outright as a very important dignitary. That we have to realize right away. But there's a tense balance, even though they understand Avram is a very important dignitary, there's a tense balance that when we read this aliyah, we don't pay attention enough to the tension that's in the word that's being indicated in the words that the Torah is using. There's tremendous tension that it literally is present in this dialogue between Avram and Bnei Ches. The Rav suggests that Avram's words of ger v'toshav anochi is much more than just a personal statement. Rather, it's the approach of the Jew to the world around him. I want to read to you what the Rav wrote. It's profound. It's so important. Here's literally his philosophy of life. What is our position vis-a-vis modern civilization, the Rav asked, with respect, for example, to science, to Western culture, to the countries in which we live? What is our position? The answer is enshrined in ger v'toshav imachem. Certainly, I am a resident. I'm one of you. I engage in business as you do. I speak your language. I take full part in your social economic institutions. But at the same time, I am a ger. I am a stranger. In some respects, a foreigner. I belong to a particular world, one that is completely foreign to you. It is a world in which I am at one with the Creator. It's a world populated by characters unknown to you, he says, with a tradition that you do not understand, with spiritual values that seem impractical in your eyes. It is a world full of altars and sacrifices, a world of Torah, of loving kindness, of sanctity and purity. You live differently. You pray differently. Your conception of charity is different from ours. Your days of rest are different from ours, and so on and so on. I am a stranger in your world, and you are strangers in mine. Jewish burial is one of the elements with respect to which we are strangers and we are foreigners in your community. A Jew dies and he's buried differently. A Jew requires a cemetery of their own, a Jewish grave, not a non-Jewish grave. And that is unbelievable and crucial in understanding the tension that's going to go on now between Bnei Ches and Ephron on the one side and Avram on the other. I am part of you, but I am separate as well. And the Jewish cemetery is uniquely different than what you understand. I cannot accept that I'm going to be buried in a non-denominational cemetery. The Rav told David Holzer in his book, and he quotes it in the Rav Thinking Out Loud in Bereshis, volume Bereshis. He has numerous volumes. In the Bereshis volume, page 223, 224, don't trust me, go ahead and look it up. But he tells the following story, and I quote it. The Rav repeating this to David Holzer. Many years ago in Boston, an interdenominational cemetery was being established. The city was involved, particularly with the funding, the Rav says. We opposed it, but it was very hard. They wanted us to be part of it. It's interdenominational, so the Jews have to be part of it. They asked, where is it found in Jewish law? I told them the story of Avraham and the Hittites. They gave me a hard time, the Rav said. A Yisrael should be buried among Jewish men. Does he come under the halacha of Meis Mitzvah if he's not? Yes, the Rav said. That means if a person's buried of a Jew is buried in interdenominational burial, he's a Meis Mitzvah, and you should try to get him removed and buried into a Kever Yisrael. That's what that means. And if you're what does that Meis Mitzvah mean? Even a Kohen does it. A Kohen will be metame for a Meis Mitzvah. You know that. The only time a Kohen is metame, it defiles himself with the dead, is if it's a category of, what do we usually understand of a Meis Mitzvah? Nobody else is around. You find a body. Nobody else is going to bury this human being. A Kohen crosses, is in the field. She's God, we hear this all the time in the news, right? They found a body and there's nobody else to, well, today you have phones. So, I don't know how many Meis Mitzvahs exist. What? No, that's what they call Meis Mitzvah there, is talking about they don't have a minion to bury. So they want you to come to that a Kohen cannot go. No. I'm talking about where you're out hiking in
Santa Monica.
That's right. And you find a body. God forbid it happens. Every once in a while, we hear it on the news. And you're a Kohen. Yeah. What are you supposed to do? Well, today it's very easy. The Meis Mitzvah has a telephone. We get okay.
Sorry to interrupt, guys.
Well, I think
If not,
okay, got it. Got it. Okay. Hopefully I came in. Okay, no problem. Okay. So yeah. Right? Today, I don't know what a Meis Mitzvah would be because of the phones, but okay. So anyhow, the Rav goes on and he says, it's a Meis Mitzvah, meaning it would be a Meis Mitzvah if you found a Jew buried in an interdenominational kever and that you could rebury him. Not always can rebury him. The Rav was asked, why is Kever Yisrael so important, Holzer writes? And the Rav answered, I do not know why. Probably because despite the fact that you associate in general society with the men, they are different in many regards. The uniqueness of the Jew comes in its expression in certain areas, in certain halachot. Kever Yisrael, being buried a Jew, is one of those expressions. It's the expression of the Jew being unique. On the one hand, we're the Toshav. On the other hand, we're the ger, correct? Jump now to Pasuk Vav. You see here in the next pasuk, in the pasuk Vav, Shma'enu Adoni, Nasi Elokim Ata B'Sochenu, B'Mivchar Kivarenu Kivaras Meisachel. Here you see B'nai Chet's response. Do they appreciate Avram as a unique, very important dignitary? 100%. Here we see Avram was respected as a great dignitary. He wasn't just a regular man. The Hittites deeply respect Avram for whom he is. He is a Nisi Elokim Ata B'Tochenu. And therefore, what do they want? They want Sarah to be buried among them. Initially, when Avram made his request, the Bnei Ches told him, unconditionally, you can bury wherever you want. You can bury in our sepulchres. And the choicest of them, you can have the most expensive, anywhere you want. And this was a magnanimous offer on Bnei Chet's part. Moreover, they treated Avram with reverence. They addressed him as Nasi Elohim, a prince of God. However, there was also an implicit condition attached to their offer. What was it? B'Sochenu, b'Mivchar Kvarenu, in our choicest, in our burial places. Their language suggested to Avram that he would have to give up his right to keep himself apart from them. He demanded to be separate. Avram, you are part of our society, they were saying. And as one of us, you must bury your dead in a burial site that belongs to us. No matter how hard Avraham tried to explain his position, excuse me, 2 seconds. I'm in the middle of the shiur. Hello? Sorry. No matter how hard Avram tried to explain his position, that on the one hand, he shared universal aspirations with them. On the other hand, he was separate, and they couldn't accept that. They couldn't get their heads around and accept the idea that Avraham was, on the one hand, a Toshav, on the other hand, a Ger. The Rav recounted the following story, a different story, that he heard from the famous Rothschild family of France. It is exactly a mirror image of Avraham in Parshas Chaye Sarah with Bnei Ches. Listen to what happened. When French Premier Charles de Gaulle was informed that the Rothschild family was planning to transfer Edmund James de Rothschild's remains to Eretz Yisrael, remember the story? I shared it with you. He became indignant. Roth and Charles de Gaulle remarked, I always thought that Rothschild, Edmund James Rothschild was a good Frenchman. Now I realize I was mistaken, de Gaulle said. Who is a good Frenchman, de Gaulle responded. One who is reared in France, educated in French schools, whose native tongue is French, and who's ready to take up arms to defend France, and who is buried in French soil. De Gaulle was no friend of the Jews, that we know. But here, clearly, he could not get his head around. He couldn't accept the idea that the Jew had to have his own cemetery. And of course, Rothschild is buried in Zichron Yaakov, a beautiful cemetery. They created a beautiful, the Rothschild family was responsible for creating the wineries in Eretz Israel at the turn of the 20th century, the end of the 19th, early 20th century. You have, what's the name of the Rishon LeZion and Zichron Yaakov. Zichron Yaakov and Rishon LeZion, and what was it called? What is the winery called? Why am I? No, Carmel. That's right. It's called Carmel. Carmel Winery. Carmel Winery was the first winery, and it was sponsored by. It was underwritten by Rothschild. And today, look what they produced in terms of wines in Eretz Yisrael, world famous and winning wines all the time. But anyhow, back to Rothschild and Charles de Gaulle. He couldn't understand, nor could Bnei Ches understand. And the Rav is teaching us that this parsha is so important on so many levels. It teaches us, number one, the halacha of a cemetery. We do not agree to interdenominational cemeteries. That's not for us. And by the way, if you look, even I'll give you an example, down in Orange County, in Costa Mesa, there's an interdenominational cemetery, but yet the Chabad, and it's not only Chabad, but Chabad uses that area. They have a whole segregated area that is all separate. And there's halachos. You have to have edges. You have to have either you're going to have bushes, so high around it, separating it, has fences. How do we know that? The Rav argued from this. The Avram demanded from Ephron what? Not only the grave itself, but the whole area around it, right? And that teaches us we don't just have a cemetery. We segregate it from everyone else as well. We build a cemetery that is different than all else. Okay, go to Pasuk Ches. Yes.
Yeah, I have just a question. How did Abraham know after Sarah died to go to Marat Machpelah?
We talked about that at the beginning of the Shiur. That was Kiryat Arba. Those words, the Rav notes, Kiryat Arba. He knew that Adam and Chava were buried there. That is what intrigued him about. That is why he wanted that.
Or something. Did he have
he wanted that plot because Adam and Chava were buried there. And he wanted to demonstrate, remember what I said at the very beginning of the Shiur, he wanted to demonstrate there is no gap between Jewish covenantal commitment and the human responsibility to the universal goals. And we indicated those universal goals. Okay, then, so initially he's talking to Bnei Ches. Then he has to talk now to, he says, I need to talk to, of course, Ephron. Go to Pasuk Ches. Vaydaber itam lemor, right? And now Pasuk Ches, and he says, he spoke to them saying, and we get the whole discussion. And when Bnei Ches failed to understand what Avram had to have his own cemetery, the tone of the conversation changes. And the Rav notes, it's in one word, you see this, because take a look in the Pasuk Ches, what's the opening word? Vayidaber. Dibur is harsh. He's nice, he's kind, he's saying ger v'tosha, ba 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 ba. All of the nice talk, now they just can't accept it, right? Because how do we know that? Because go back to Pasuk Vav. Shma'enu Adoni Nesi Elokim Ata. What's the next word? B'tochenu b'mivchar kivarenu. They can't accept that he's going to bury in his own cemetery, right? Ish mimenu et kivro lo yichla mimcha mikvar meitecho. We're not going to hold anything back. He says, I'm not getting through to them. You see, the Rav notes the words I told you a few minutes ago. This story in the Torah is filled with tension. And when we read it, we don't note it. But the Rav notes, Vayedaber deeper is a harsh, indicates sternness, precision. Avram was telling them, your offer is most magnanimous. It's most generous. But I'm sorry, I can't accept it. That's not what I'm looking for. Instead, he asks for the grave located where? Biksei HaSodeh. What's Biksei HaSodeh? At the end, not with where you're burying. At the end, Biksei HaSodeh, at the edge of the field, apart from all the other graves, one that will legally be his own. Here, Avram inserts the fundamental doctrine of Kever Yisrael. Kever Yisrael has to be separate from everyone else. Correct. And now go. V'yitain li et Marat HaMachpelah, pasuk tes. V'yitain li et Marat HaMachpelah. Asher lo asher biksei sadeu b'chesed malei neno li b'sochachem la'achuzat kever. What's la'achuzat kever? A grave inheritance. The final struggle ensues not with Bnei Ches, with Ephron, right? And Avram and Ephron over the nature of the transfer. Ephron says, I'll give it to you as a gift. And what does Avram say? Don't want a gift. Why not? Why not? What's wrong with a gift? A Jew doesn't receive that Kever Yisrael as a gift. A Jew has to pay for it. That's also a law. Ephron pressed Avram to accept property unconditionally as a gift, And Avram refuses, and the Rav learns from this a very important law. He says the teacher of the Rambam taught the Rambam. The Rambam tells us that the legal hold upon a gift is inferior than the legal hold upon an item that you purchase. You own something if you purchase it with a stronger legal hold than if you receive a gift. A gift, the only thing it's said that no one should be buried in a grave that does not belong to him. You're buried in a grave that belongs to you. The only thing that a person really owns, this is a real Musar Haskell, the only thing that a person really owns in this world is not possessions. It's the Dalit Amos that we get buried in. That's it, right? No, that's our 4 cubits of the grave. That's what we own. No compromise may be allowed on this issue. We insist on owning the grave. So the Rav taught us from this story another halacha pertaining to that. What the Jewish community owns the grave, not the non-Jews. It is our gravesite. It's ours. Even I remember going to Hamburg on one of the tours in the early 21st century, right? In 2001, 2002, I think it was. And I led a tour to Germany, and we went to Hamburg. And Hamburg has the largest cemetery in Germany, the largest cemetery, massive, largest cemetery. It's massive. And guess what? The Jews got their own part of the cemetery. Nobody else is, you don't go, if you want to go into the Jewish cemetery in Hamburg, you go in differently than you go into the rest of the cemetery. It's all segregated. How do we know this? From Parshas Chaye Sarah. So what did we learn to wrap this up? We learned here, number one, the response, the emotional and intellectual response to death, right? Lifkod the Sarah, Lispod the Lifkod. He cries, but he clearly cries. But what's that hesped? Because he realized Sarah was much more than just his wife. He realized the world was losing the partner of the covenantal community, right? That's number one. So we saw, and when you're stricken by mourning, you're not able to negotiate, right? You're not able to function. It's vayipol. Vayakam means that you rise from that emotional state and you regain your capability of being a dignified human being who can, in this case, can hold his own in the negotiation for Maras HaMachpelah. And then we learned all about what he was telling humanity. Our role as Jews we are a ger and we're a toshav. We have to fuse both. On the one hand, we participate in the world around us. We engage in all of the problems that the world's engaged in. On the other hand, we're unique people. We have our parochial concerns. And we know, you try to explain as the Rav said, you try to explain it to the non-Jew. He said, oh, what is this religion? This religion doesn't make any sense to them. It doesn't. It's strange to them. We're a ger. We are. We don't eat meat and milk together. We have a different day that we celebrate as the Sabbath. We don't celebrate Sunday. No, we can't come in on Friday and on Friday evening and Shabbos morning. No, that's Shabbos. That's Shabbos to us. And then wait until you have 3-day yontif, right? And throw in Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah that they never heard of, right? And you're missing that too. Yeah. That's the Jew. We're a ger and we're a toshav. Very important. And again, that's why he wanted the Maras HaMachpelah, because it demonstrated that unity with society's aspirations as well, society's concerns as well. We don't wipe ourselves off. It makes us more responsible, not less responsible. Correct? And then the Rav pointed out, we learn all of the halachos of a cemetery from how Avraham negotiated for Maras HaMachpelah, that he would not accept a gift, that he wanted to pay top dollar for it, and that it had to be achuzas kever b'stei hasada, right? It had to be its own field, its own separate area, and it becomes the Jewish cemetery, totally removed from the non-Jewish cemetery. By the way, the Jew has an obligation to bury non-Jews. That's part of the halacha. The halacha is we have an obligation, but we don't bury a non-Jew in a Jewish cemetery. And we know that that has caused tremendous tension in Eretz Yisrael with the Russians that weren't halachically Jewish, right? Weren't halachically Jewish, and they fought and they fell as soldiers in Tzava. And what do? So the Rabbanut came with conclusions that they're buried at the entrance, at the, which is Dalan Amos away, because they're differentiating. Yes, you can imagine the emotions that this unfortunate situation raises, that these people weren't halakhic Jews. What do? Because we see it from this parsha. Yeah.
Jewish soldiers in the American army that are sometimes buried in the.
Yeah, this whole business that what it called that Rabbi J.J. Shafter Project Benjamin, and Shalom Lamb. Yeah, it's they can't get those bodies removed. At least the best that they can do is remove the cross from the kever.
It's basically a compromise, if you will.
It is a compromise because the families, first of all, you have to, until they get the families to agree to identify as Jewish. I understand it takes sometimes it goes very smoothly. Other times it's a whole long process until they get a relative, if they find a relative, and then the relative has to agree and has to sign off. Yes, it's Jewish, and then it removed the cross, and then they put on but nobody is getting their rights to move the kever. That would be the ultimate. Clearly, that would be the ultimate. Went to that. I was involved in a burial, my first position in Rabbanis in Mount Sinai Jewish Center, in burying a non-Jew. A woman had converted to Judaism. Actually, she's sitting shiva right now for her husband, and she was converted by Rabbi Schechter's father, Rav Melech Schechter, Rav Herschel Schechter's father. May he rest in peace. That was the Rav who ran the Bezdin in her conversion. And she was one of the first members of the shul, no question, hands down. And when her mother, it's a very interesting story. Her parents were German by descent, and her mother was a non-Jew, married to a Jew. Her father was Jewish. And then the Holocaust came, and her father got killed, and her mother escaped, and her mother got out with her. And they came to New York. To Washington Heights was a German stronghold. That's where a lot of Germans lived, and she converted to Judaism here. But her mother lived with her. Her non-Jewish mother lived with her. And when her mother died, I was rabbi in Mount Sinai Jewish Center, and she turned to me and she said, "What do we do?" I said, "We're going to conduct a funeral," and we did it It was interesting. If I remember correctly, they had a kever for her in the Jewish cemetery. And we said, no, we're not doing that. They had purchased whatever. And we sold that. And right next to the Jewish cemetery was an interdenominational cemetery in Queens or Brooklyn. It was Queens or Brooklyn. I don't remember all the details. And I officiated at the funeral. Yeah. We said Tehillim. What do? You can say Tehillim in English. You can say, And we did kura. We did a kura. We buried. And I said, you can use any casket you want, unlike, a Jewish funeral. We didn't follow halacha in the sense of burying her Jewish, but we did halacha that she got a kura. And we did not leave the cemetery until her grave was full. No. An interesting story. She wanted a bit of a shiva. She wanted that people should come over, because people knew her mother. She lived right next door to her. Right next door to her apartment on the Heights. So she said she didn't sit like we would sit. Halacha, you don't have to cover mirrors. You don't have to. There was no kriya. No kriya. I don't remember doing a kriya. I wouldn't have done a kriya.
My parents had really good friends, and she's actually still alive. I think she turns 100 next month. Where it was the same situation, but they did not identify as Jews.
No.
There was no issue about burial.
Here, that she's a frum woman, and she wanted to know what to do with the funeral for her mother. So we buried her. We buried her kedas v'kedin like you're supposed to do. She is a mace mitzvah in that sense. You got to bury her. You got to handle it. You got to do the burial. The funeral is a mitzvah. Halacha, it's a mitzvah. And so we did. We did. Okay. So that's Chaye Sarah, the first,
Question.
yeah.
I don't know if it has anything to do with the burial of Sarah or whatever, but does this parsha, does this give us a stake to Hebron? Does this give us?
Yeah, 100%.
This gives-
You don't remember when there was a riot in Hebron in Maras HaMachpelah many years ago. I will tell you how many years ago. The president of the state of Israel was the father of the present president, Herzog, right? It was Chaim. Chaim Herzog was the president. Rav Herzog Zichrono Livracha's son, oldest son. Yaakov Zichrono Livracha's brother. So Chaim Herzog was president of the state of Israel at the time. I take that, but was he president or was he ambassador to the UN? I think he was ambassador to the UN. He wasn't president. He was ambassador to the UN. And there was a riot in Maras HaMachpelah. The Arabs rioted and destroyed the Beit HaKnesset in Marat HaMachpelah between Avraham and Sarah. You know where you've been there. So where they say Avram's kever is and Sarah's kever. And there was there's a base medrash there with Sfarim and Sidurim, etc., etc. And they did literally pillaged the whole thing and destroyed it. And it came before the UN. And Herzog was defending the rights for the Jewish people to be in it. And he Xeroxed this parsha, this aliyah, and he Xeroxed it. It was at the Security Council, if I'm not mistaken. He Xeroxed this parsha, the first aliyah, and he handed it out as Exhibit A. He says, ladies and gentlemen, do you want to know why the Jewish people are so connected to the city of Hebron? I demonstrate Exhibit A. It's called the Bible. Here, we purchased this. Our founder of our faith purchased this with serious money, and he showed it. He Xeroxed it. He says, "There it is. That's our stake to Maras HaMachpelah, to Hebron."
I think her name was Didi Coleman. She's a black preacher, and she's a big supporter of Israel.
Yeah.
I think she's from Detroit.
Yes,
She came and she spoke. And
Yes.
she said, you guys got to talk about the Bible.
that's right. Well, he did. I think he was then the ambassador to the UN. And he did Exhibit A. Here it is. It's the aliyah from Chaye Sarah. Okay. The other part of Chaye Sarah is, of course, finding the wife for. Okay. Okay. We'll continue next week. Right? Is that correct? Even though it's Erev Yontif. Havlakas Ner is later. Okay.
Isn't language also when Yaakov and Esav meet?